Storytime about how I married my blind date after knowing each other for 2 weeks. After I broke up with my ex who cheated on me 4 times, I swore off men. But my friends and family were constantly telling me that I should at least try dating other people. I went 2 full years without dating anyone, and it was the best decision I ever made. Instead of going out on dates, I decided to take that time to work on myself. I prioritized myself and started doing the things that I've always wanted to do. For example, I always wanted to learn how to play the piano, so I put myself into piano classes. I also started taking belly dancing classes, and I signed up to Pilates. I also decided to focus on my mental health because I realized that I always depended on validation from men. I was the happiest I'd ever been. My family even saw the changes in me, and my mom told me that maybe it was time for me to start dating. Last year, my sister signed up to a bunch of dating apps, and she actually met some really good men. I really thought about it long and hard, and I decided to sign up for one too. And I told myself that I would take it slow and easy. Finally, I went on my first date. It didn't go very well because my date only talked about himself and didn't ask me any questions. But then my second date was this amazing guy. And I kid you not, it was love at first sight. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I married my blind date after knowing each other for only 2 weeks. So I walk into the restaurant and I know what he looks like. He was already sitting at the table, but as soon as we locked eyes, it was instant attraction. But not just attraction, it was love. I honestly don't know how to describe it. It was this feeling I'd never felt before. When I sat down at the table, we instantly connected. We talked about everything, from our childhoods up until that point. We talked about school, friends, even our favorite foods, favorite colors, places we wanted to visit. I'm talking about everything. We even talked about our family problems, which I had never done that with anyone else. We basically ordered the entire menu. And over the next 5 hours, we talked and ate and laughed. You know when there's moments of silence in a conversation, and sometimes it's awkward? There was none of that. We were constantly talking and asking each other questions. The restaurant actually had to tell us to go home. When we said goodbye, he asked me if he could take me to breakfast the next day. And of course, I said yes. As I was driving home, I knew that this was the guy I wanted to marry. For the next week, we hung out almost every single day when we weren't working. And we texted each other day and night. He would send me paragraphs. By the end of the week, he asked me if he could meet my parents. We had a wonderful dinner and my parents loved him. He put so much effort into talking to them and even brought them gifts. The following day, I met his family, and they loved me too. The following Monday, he asked me to move in with him, and I said yes. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I married my blind date after only knowing each other for 2 weeks. After 1 week of knowing each other, he asked me to move in. Like I said, my parents loved him, but when I told him that we were going to move in together after knowing each other for 1 week, they thought it was a terrible idea. But there was no way I was backing out on moving in with him. I told him that this was a risk I was willing to take. I was a grown adult, so I had the final word. That very same week, I started moving all my stuff in. After living together for 3 days, we were having so much fun. I was living with my best friend. We would tell each other everything. We decided to host a dinner for our family and friends. His family got along really well with my family, and his friends ended up loving me. By the end of that second week, my boyfriend was talking about getting married, and I said it would be a dream to marry him. And guess what? The next day, he takes me out for an early breakfast. While we're sitting at the restaurant, the server brings over a box, and he tells me to open it. And inside was a beautiful emerald ring. I had told him on our first date that emeralds were my favorite stones. He got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, and I said yes. In order to avoid having to convince our families, we went straight to the court and got married the following day. Yes, I know it's totally crazy, but I am so happy. We've been married now for 3 years. We've traveled to 8 different countries, and we also decided to have children. I never thought I would marry the man of my dreams after 2 weeks of knowing him, but my risk paid off. What should we name our first baby?
Storytime about when I woke up to a hooded figure standing over me. Due to a multitude of factors, including a recent death of a close friend, I was unbearably depressed at this time in my life. For that reason, my family flew across the country to visit me in LA, where I live. We thought it would be nice to visit Catalina Island. When we arrived, it became apparent to us that it was off-season. It was late November, the weather was cold, and as a result, the island was nearly empty besides locals and a few straggling tourists such as ourselves. Our first priority was to ditch our luggage so we could explore the island, so we immediately checked into our motel, though that word hardly does its place justice. I call it a motel because all the doors to the rooms exited to the outside, but in actuality, our room was one of 20 to 30 quaint guest house-looking buildings arranged in a sort of horseshoe shape around a walkway, with rooms on either side of the path. The entrance to the motel was essentially one of the points of the horseshoe, and if you walked dead straight, you'd reach the room that we were given, essentially on the corner before you have to go right to go further into the horseshoe. So from our room, one path led back to the street, the other further into the secluded maze of rooms. After a day of exploring, and having just finished dinner, it was time for a cold, dark walk back to the room. Catalina Island is a decent distance from the mainland, and let me just say, it gets dark. Similarly dark was my headspace after the dinner conversation took a left turn and my overwhelming depression got the best of me. I pulled my black hoodie tighter over my freezing ears and walked ahead of my parents to the hotel room, telling them I just needed to go to sleep. And I did immediately. Depression sometimes makes that easy. I was already losing consciousness as they entered after me, drifting off without so much as a good night. I then woke up to my mom saying my name, a harsh whisper. The room had 2 beds, my parents' bed closer to the door and mine further in the room. My mom's voice cut through the silence again. She sounded concerned for me. I didn't blame her, considering my mental state at the time. Groggy, I rolled over. "What?" I asked. As my eyes adjusted to the dim moonlight coming in through the curtains, I saw her turn to face me. She was surprised to see me in my bed. Her eyes got wide. If I'm in my bed, who was she talking to? We both looked back to where she was previously looking and see a hooded figure in all black standing over their bed. In that moment, we were both frozen with fear. Part 2, when I woke up to a hooded figure standing over me. We were on an island in the middle of the ocean and woke up to see a hooded stranger looming over us. This moment seemed to last forever. Life isn't like the movies, where the characters unleash a blood-curdling scream. Sometimes the only thing that comes out is panicked and guttural. My mom's words became low and severe as she said my dad's name in a dire voice I've never heard her use before. Then the hooded figure did something so bizarre and unsettling. It didn't advance towards us, but instead crouched in the corner near where it stood. The way it crouched was so absolutely unexpected, even in regards to this already unexpected situation, that it terrified me. It seemed animalistic. I knew 2 things. The hooded figure had been standing over us sleeping, and it's not acting in any sort of way that I can understand. As opposed to the infinite moment of this figure standing over us mere seconds ago, the series of events that unfolded when my hulking ex-military dad woke up happened in an instant. Suddenly, we were at the door, not knowing which way the intruder went. My mom was screaming, "Get him! Get him!" My dad was running down one path of the horseshoe, further into the hotel, shouting through sheer adrenaline, "I'm going to fucking kill you!" I ran down the other path towards the street. When I got there, not a sign of the intruder, but it became suspiciously quiet behind me. I ran back to the room to find my dad quietly walking back, his head low. He gets really close to me and I hear him say, "It's a fucking kid." So basically, some young teen, tall and lanky as I am in my 20s, wearing all black including a black hoodie, went into the wrong room. Our room. The one time my parents just so happened to forget to lock the door. My mom woke up when he entered and seeing a tall person in a black hoodie thought it was me, assumedly leaving the room in a depressive episode. And when the hooded figure crouched, that was him realizing his mistake and panicking. He was scared of us. As I got back to the room, my mom walked out and hugs the kid, who was now crying his eyes out. I would be too if a massive ex-soldier was sprinting after me with murder in his eyes.
Am I wrong for hiding my girlfriend's heels before going to my sister's wedding? To start off, I'm going to mention that I'm your typical 5'6" short guy. You can't say typical and then 5'6" in the same sentence. I hate myself. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. I hate myself for it. I'm openly insecure about it and have exhausted all solutions to fix the issue. I met my girlfriend 6 months ago. She met my family and they all embraced her right away. My sister invited her to the wedding and mentioned including her in the wedding photos. I asked my girlfriend what shoes she was going to wear and she showed me a pair of high heels that would have basically made her look 2 times taller than me. I asked if she could consider wearing sandals instead since there was going to be photos and I didn't want to look like a gnome sitting next to her. She called me silly and brushed off my concerns, which was not appreciated. The day of the wedding, I hid her pair of heels. She has only one set in the apartment because she moved out all the old ones after I asked her to. She tried looking for them and really seemed to think something strange happened. I started telling her to hurry up so that we can go to the venue on time and she ended up wearing flats as a replacement. You're bad, man. Everything went well, and I gave her high heels back once we got home. She was shocked when she saw me holding them. I admitted hiding them for the reasons I stated above, and she got mad at me and said that I shouldn't have done that and forced her to wear sandals that completely didn't match with the dress. She kept saying I got what I wanted, but she will forever look awkward in these photos wearing those sandals. I do think she has every reason to be upset with me, but what was I supposed to do after I made my wishes clear and she brushed them off knowing full well how I felt about those high heels? So, am I the asshole? I really thought of it as a harmless move and I think she might have overreacted. Yo, dude, are you serious? Do you know how you sound right now? Am I the asshole for telling my sister she would have been a terrible mother? I, 17 male, have 2 sisters, Alice 29 and Miranda 33. I am much closer to Alice than I am to Miranda. Miranda is also not on good terms with our parents. Alice has 4 kids and is currently expecting child number 5, while Miranda can't have children, which her ex divorced her for. Miranda is very successful in life. She has a nice apartment, works a good job, and earns a decent amount of money. Alice, on the other hand, is struggling financially. She had her first child right out of high school and got pregnant with her second soon after. So she decided to become a stay-at-home mom for her children while her boyfriend provides for them. Me and my parents try to help them out as much as possible, be it childcare or money, whatever she needs. I love my nieces and nephew. I take them to the park and play with the older ones. I really enjoy it. Miranda doesn't help out with them. She says it's because she's too busy. Well, she works long hours, but she doesn't have kids, so I don't know what she does on the weekends. She also doesn't help out financially, which I find unfair, since she makes so much money and all she does is spend it on herself, although she does give us very nice gifts for Christmas and birthdays. So here comes the part where I may have been an asshole. You were already an asshole, so let's see what this is about. We got on the topic of Christmas presents, and I told her some of the stuff I wanted. She nodded and said she would give our parents a coupon for a much-needed vacation, and Alice some clothes she had mentioned, and also also some new boots and jackets for her kids. I was a little stunned she didn't have any more for Alice, so I asked, why do you only get Alice the bare minimum? You can afford to help out more and you refused to out of spite. Miranda looked at me and laughed. She said it wasn't her business to feed 6 people and that Alice was old enough to make her choices and live with the consequences. She knew what she was getting herself into and that she wouldn't pay Alice's way through life just because she kept having children she couldn't afford. I agree. I actually called me a bitch, but I agree. I was stunned at how cold she reacted. I asked her how she could live her life being so selfish and uncaring, and she got angry and told me, listen kid, there are some things you're way too young for to be discussing with me, and this is one of those. Drop the subject or get out. I agree with her. What the fuck? You're 17. You don't even have a real job. You haven't gone to school. You don't know the hardships of life. At that point, like, you cannot tell your grown-ass sister who worked her ass off to get where she is how to spend her money. I got really frustrated with her and said something I probably shouldn't have. No wonder your husband divorced you. Even if you could have children, you would be a terrible mother. Miranda got very quiet and told me to leave and never come back. She has now blocked me on everything, and though I don't agree with her not helping out, I'm starting to feel guilty for saying what I said. So, am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for refusing to pay the babysitter for new glasses after my daughter broke her old ones? I'm male 35, am a widower with 2 kids, 9 and 11. I recently got back to work, and since I work night shifts, I had to get a babysitter. My coworker recommended a relative, and it's been going great except for a few days ago. The babysitter called me and told me that my 9-year-old daughter broke her glasses. I got home, heard both sides of the story, and came to the conclusion that it was an accident. But the babysitter said she broke them intentionally after she refused to let her outside. I asked my 11-year-old daughter, and she said the sitter's story is accurate, but she and her sister have beef. I figured she set her up and apologized for the misunderstanding. She insisted there wasn't one and asked me to pay. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay the babysitter for new glasses after my daughter broke her old ones? She said there was no misunderstanding and asked me to pay for new glasses. I was taken aback by her request and told her I thought we talked this out, and that we ruled it an accident. I apologized but refused and said it was unfair to expect me to pay, especially since she didn't pay attention to keep her glasses safe. The babysitter argued with me, then started crying, swearing that my daughter broke them to get back at her. My 11-year-old sided with her, but my 9-year-old said she is only siding with the babysitter for her own benefits. I then asked the babysitter to leave. She got my coworker involved, and she's saying I need to take responsibility and pay for them. I apologized, but I refused to pay.